1 C2 English story, The Great Plague of London. The Great Plague of London in 1665 killed more than 100,000 people in the city, about a third who lived in its poorest areas. The disease was quickly spread by rat fleas. For example, a corpse newly dead from the plague had a cooling body temperature. The fleas left their host to find another source of blood. One landed on another victim's skin, the lower leg, and bit into the flesh. Symptoms of infection began in hours or sometimes days. The contagion penetrated the sufferer either by the blood vessels or lymphatic system, which causes fever symptoms and a dangerously high temperature. Lips, teeth, and tongue would be covered in foul brown slime as the infection spread. In agony, they would fall unconscious. Often, open abscesses, hemorrhaging, or secondary infection would prove fatal. Few survived, especially those already weak from a poor diet, filthy housing, and lack of sanitation. The pneumonic plague was caused by sputum coughed up by a victim. The sputum was infectious for up to 5 months and therefore highly contagious. Septicemic plague was identified by black and blue blotches all over the body. Victims could die within a few hours. Both were caused primarily by flea bites. The outcome would be how the infection penetrated the victim and often the health of the person involved. After a long frost, May 1665 came, and it was warm and beautiful. There was, however, already talk of the plague. Rumours were rife. Many of the rich fled London as a precaution. The poor were committed by their poverty to stay in the city. For 10 weeks after the frost broke, the city within the walls remained immune to the plague. Several cases of infection were reported together, but London's commerce was still unaffected. However, slowly over the next month, the rich, who lived a life of pleasure, became uncomfortable about the plague's near presence. They gave place to alarm, and throughout June, many joined the exodus on full coaches and wagons travelling to the countryside. As the plague settled on London, the reaction was apparent immediately. The city had been a busy, thriving place, the population packed tight in small houses with narrow streets, as was customary in walled towns and cities. Every house would have been full of people, for merchants and tradesmen lived over their business, whether large or small. The plague's advance put an end to sellers vying for trade before their premises. Everyone was suspicious. The poorest alleys were the first to harbour the plague. London became strangely quiet, few lingering on the once busy streets. A plague sufferer rarely knew when they were infected. Often a slight indisposition was ignored before cold shivering began in a short time. Nausea and vomiting followed, so violent and exhausting that the victim quickly died. Others became tired as if dosed with opiate and would fall into a profound sleep, and if not woken up, often died. It was rarely longer than 2 or 3 days when visible signs of the plague appeared on the body. Blotches appeared mostly under the arms and in the groin. Without any kind of anaesthetic, the pain was so severe that patients often collapsed. Gangrene often killed the victim due to poor hygiene after incisions were made to relieve the pus from the boils. Many of the medical professionals thought that the plague was carried in the air. In unventilated conditions behind locked doors, the deaths piled up. Over 1,000 deaths a day were endured at the height of the pandemic. The Great Plague was a tragedy of ignorance. The closed houses were a breeding ground for germs. Many shut up in them died quickly, very often whole families. London became a city from which to escape. People began seeking safety in the countryside. Travellers trying to enter other cities and towns were turned back by watchmen on the highways as the plague spread. Places such as Southampton, Poole, and Dover became infected, all via different routes. Letters from London were held in suspicion of a possible vehicle for the plague, although this theory was not believed by postmasters. However, all mail was forbidden to enter or leave the capital. London was a scene of misery. The doctors, surgeons, and apothecaries who had not fled were overburdened with work. The plague brought out the best and worst in humankind, those with qualities of courage, self-sacrifice, and humanity, and others, those with a pleasure-seeking life thinking only of themselves, were held in contempt. Eventually, the Great Plague passed, becoming a memory. Fear of its return lingered until the end of the 17th century. Its eradication was helped by the winter, which took its toll on the rats and fleas. The Great Fire of London 2 years later further eliminated the contagion. Now, let's go through some of the vocabulary from this story. Plague. Plague. A plague is a serious disease that spreads quickly to a lot of people and usually ends in death. Contempt. Contempt. Contempt is a feeling that someone or something is unimportant and deserves no respect. Corpse. Corpse. A corpse is a dead body. Immune. Immune. If someone is immune, they are protected against a particular disease by particular substances in the blood. Infectious. Infectious. If something is infectious, it is able to be passed from one person, animal, or plant to another. Linger. Linger. To linger is to take a long time, to leave, or disappear. Customary. Customary. If something is customary, it is usual or traditional. Eliminated, or to eliminate, is to defeat someone or to remove or take away someone or something. Fled. Fled. Fled is the past participle of to flee, which means to run away, to escape. Foul. Foul. Something that is extremely unpleasant is foul. Precaution. Precaution. If something is a precaution, it is done to protect people or things against possible harm or trouble. Sacrifice, or self-sacrifice, is the act of giving up something that is valuable to you in order to help someone else. Surgeon. Surgeon. A surgeon is a doctor who is specially trained to perform medical operations.